Hey, George Haas here. I wanted to continue our conversation about integrating Metta and Vipassana as developing into Metta jhana. This would be a focus on a specific person, intending the metta, that is radiating the metta toward them, focusing narrowly on the mind state of metta, is it present or not, developing ways to foster its arising and then its continuation. If it is present, fostering its continuation. I like the idea of developing a short list of people that just in thinking of them, bringing them to mind, brings with them the mind state of metta. This tends to be people that you have a simple relationship with. Maybe the people closest to you, the relationship is complex, so that when you think of them, perhaps the mind state of metta arises, but then other mind states arise, longing, lust, anger, and so on. Establishing the mind state of metta at the beginning of your practice period, focusing on that until the mind is calm and concentrated, and then shifting into Vipassana practice to begin that aspect of practice. If you look at it from a traditional way of exploring through the Satipatthana Sutta, then you're looking at developing the four foundations of mindfulness. The first foundation being the sensing experience. So then the idea is to begin an exploration of the sensing experience. Using a Mahasi method, basically, you're simply noting every arising of sensing experience, every arising of experience, and creating and using some label to note it. So distinguishing a noting and labeling practice. Noting is to know where your attention is and then to soak in, have the experience, and then as your attention is drawn somewhere else, allowing it to go, and then knowing where it goes, and then soaking in it, having the experience of that. Adding to that a labeling practice where you actually generate in auditory thinking space a word that corresponds to what the noting experience is. As householders in our householder type practice, the labeling tends to offer a boost, a kind of turbocharging of the concentration, so it can be useful. It also is an indication or helps provide an indication of when you get caught up and lost in thinking, because you typically stop the labeling process. So it's like a backup system to keep you engaged in the present moment meditation. I like to use Shinzen Young's see, hear, feel strategy, a flexible see, hear, feel, so that you're using broad categories to define the sensing experience rather than generating individual labels. Once you get the hang of the technique, it's simpler and less complex than the noting every experience. It isn't so much the noting part, but the generating a label for each sensing experience. The see, hear, feel technique is then to note all visual experience, whether it's internal or external, as see, noting all auditory experience as hear, whether internal or external, and noting all sensing experience in the body as feel, whether it's internal or external. In the body, the internal feeling is related to emotion, the emotional response to the experience of the present moment. And the external experience is the contact with the world, gravity, temperature, respiration, circulation, digestion, the efforting to hold the posture. So in the Mahasi method, simply noting wherever your attention is, creating a label. If you're lifting your arm, lifting, grabbing if you're picking something up. In the Shinzenian version of that, that would all be feel sensation. The sense of self typically arises in the internal experience, so internal visual thinking, internal auditory thinking, internal feeling states in the body. And then the world tends to be formed by the external experience, external sight, external sound, external feel in the body. Breaking down the internal visual experience, there's the mental screen where you experience memory, planning, fantasy, the imagery associated with that. There's the aspect of the outline of the body in its current position in visual thinking. There's the aspect of the location of the body in its current environment in internal visual thinking. There's the aspect of image reaction to local sensation in the body. Let's say you have a sensation in your right hand and there's a visual equivalent to that. And then the image reaction to exterior sound. So you hear a sound and often there's an image reaction to that. So you hear a bird and then the mind pictures a bird. In auditory thinking, there
Oh, we're back.
I think we had an interval there. I'm not sure what was lost. I was describing the see, hear, feel as objects, and maybe I'll begin again. Internal visual experience is the internal visual quality that we're able to detect. One aspect of it is the mental screen, where you experience imagery associated with memory, planning, and fantasy. For most people, it's centered at the eyes, in front of, or slightly behind the eyes. You have the aspect of the outline of the body in internal visual thinking. Most people report a sort of glowy edge with a dark center. Some people report a rapid assemblage of image reaction to local sensation in the body. It's a way of knowing in visual thinking how the body is currently positioned. There's the location of the body in its current environment. If you close the eyes, you may notice an after image, which is this component of internal visual thinking. There's the image reaction to local sensation in the body, so you feel a sensation in the right foot and you have a corresponding image in the mind of that. Also the image reaction to exterior sound, so you hear a sound and the mind pictures it. In auditory thinking, internal auditory experience is the clear talk of the mind, words that you can understand. Also, there's a subtle vibration typically there. If you concentrate deeply on that vibratory experience, you may notice that the cognition for clear talk arises before the clear talk does, and if you maintain awareness of that, the clear talk doesn't need to arise so that it doesn't. In the body, the internal experience of emotion related to the generation of the internal experience related to the generation of self is the emotional quality in the body. So that typically plays out on the surface, face, front of the throat, front of the torso, inside of the arms, inside of the legs. The external aspects, eyes open, visual thinking, so that would be the world you encounter in hearing space, external sound, the soundscape around you. And in the body, that intersection with the body, the effects of gravity, of temperature, respiration, circulation, digestion. So simply letting the mind go, be drawn to whatever is interesting, and noticing the quality of that. Is it a see experience, a hear experience, a feel experience? Doing a simple noting experience of that. Your attention is drawn to visual thinking, note see, to auditory thinking, note hear, to visual thinking, to visual thinking, noting see, auditory thinking, noting hear, and any experience in the body, noting feel. Okay, thanks.